Hi, it's Linda with No Frills ASMR. Are any of you watching the TV show, the series called I better make that a capital, The Pitt? It's on HBO Max. It's a series. I'm going to talk about it today, and I thought I might go episode by episode to kind of refresh my memory. But I'll do a quick, no spoilers part right now. This is a medical drama, and it's based at a hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it's sort of reminiscent if you watched back in the 90s the show ER, or 90s and early 2000s, I guess. And the lead actor is Noah Wiley, who was Dr. Carter on ER. He was like the young doctor. And on this show, he's the older head of the emergency room department. And it is a teaching hospital, so there are residents. And this series takes place in one single day. And each episode is 1 hour of the day. And the residents, I think they're called residents, they're having their very first day at the ER. And yeah, it's stuffed, to make it very dramatic. I don't think most ERs, I don't know, I've never worked in an ER. I would assume this would be a rather hectic day. They even say that. But it's, I think it's a very well written show. The medical parts of it, I can't speak for, but I've heard that they're pretty, accurate for a TV show. Obviously, the paperwork and all that is sort of left off. And the acting is excellent, but it's very stress-inducing, I would even say. And I cried at least 4 or 5 times watching this. But I do have some sort of hospital PTSD. And I'm not just saying that, literally I had a doctor tell me that. But I loved it. And it was one of those shows where in the morning I'd think about it, the next day, and think about different things about it. And then I couldn't wait because my husband didn't want to watch it. So I had to wait for him to go to bed, and then I'd start it. So I kind of couldn't wait for him to go to bed. I'm like, are you tired? Aren't you tired? You look tired. Because for him, it was too much stress. And he couldn't really watch ER. It was too upsetting. Because it's kind of upsetting. I'm not going to lie. But if you like that kind of show and, find it interesting. I just find it interesting, all the different problems that come in that they're trying to solve. And it's not there's no romance like there are in some hospital shows. This is straight hospital stuff. But I really enjoyed it. So that's the no spoilers review. But now I'm going to pull up on my iPad an episode by episode rundown, and we can just kind of talk about it a little bit, because I thought that might be kind of fun if you have watched it, or if you'll never watch it, but you're like, no, but I'm curious what happened. Whoops, hold on. So I found this. It's on vulture.com. I don't know anything about Vulture. I don't know what, but they had this, and I haven't really looked at it yet. But there's Noah. The Pitt, set in financially strapped emergency department in Pittsburgh, stars Noah Wiley as Dr. Michael Robbie Rabanovich. Yeah, he goes by Dr. Robbie or Dr. Rob. He's the guy in charge of the ER for a 15-hour shift. That was the other crazy part. I think on episode 8, I kind of thought, oh, that was the season finale. And then I look and there's like 4 more episodes. I'm like, oh no, what's happening? I will say that there is a part that's a little predictable. That it's almost like you're being set up and you know you're being set up for what is about to come. But I don't think that really matters. It's fine. So each episode is a 1-hour shift, which means for newbie doctors, the whole season is also their first day on the job. So because of that structure and a million other things, like a lack of George Clooney, the persistent presence of cell phones, the Pitt is not ER. Yeah, it's different enough from ER that it doesn't feel like ER was a lot more about their interpersonal relationships and stuff. All right. So episode 1 takes place at 7 a.m. And these are 2 of the, I guess they're nurses. And that's Dr. Robbie. And these 2, I think she speaks like 9 languages or something. And they can speak, I don't know what language they're speaking, but they speak another language. So it's kind of funny because they kind of have these private conversations. But you get the, what do you call it, subtitles, so you can read what they're saying, which is sort of a fun little device they have. Not even 10 minutes into our first hour, spent in the middle of the busiest Pittsburgh emergency department you've ever seen. Our skilled, kind-hearted, definitely suffering from PTSD that he is in total denial about. Yeah, okay. So Dr. Robbie has PTSD from working at the hospital during COVID, and his mentor was on a, what do you call that machine? They used to always say it during COVID. I forget, ECMO. Anyway, but they needed the machines, and his chances that this machine would ever save him, I don't know. So he had to make the decision to take him off the machine and allow him to die. And he suffers with guilt about that. It seems they don't tell you, that kind of comes out as the seasons go on. I did say this is the spoiler section, right? If you don't want to know anything, this is Spoilerville right here. Although I don't know how much you can spoil a show like this. Well, a little. So, and then there's another doctor. That's right. You find out she's pregnant. Okay, I'm not going to read that. That's dumb. This pilot episode could use 10% more exposition. I disagree with that. I thought one of the really smart things they have in this show is because it's a teaching hospital, and Dr. Rob, I'm going to call him Dr. Rob because I feel like they called him that, even though they're saying Robbie. Didn't they say Dr. Rob? Anyway, he shows up in the room, and there are 2, what do they call, student doctors? I'm blanking the name, but anyway, usually there are 2, or there's a nurse and a student, and he says, so, what do you think's going on? And basically they have to tell him what all the options are that could be wrong, what they're going to do about it. So it's this very, very clear exposition of what is happening to the patient and what they're thinking. And then he responds to them with what they may have missed or whatever, or what else it could be. So you're very, very clear all the time on what's going on with each and every patient. And I feel like that is a really good use of that, because sometimes, when shows, they want to tell you something, and it's what? Obviously this doctor wouldn't tell this other doctor, something as basic as that. But with this, it's because they are their first day and they're students, they're having to explain everything, which I thought was really a good way to use that. They talk about how he's not quite like his character in ER. Okay. He's the chief of emergency department. he's working on the anniversary of the death of his mentor. That's right. So everybody's a little worried about him having a rough day. And the head nurse, who is wonderful, that actress is so good. She says, she's telling people, like, be nice to him today. It's going to be a hard day. And it ends up being like a terrible day. Okay, so that episode, we kind of get introduced to everybody. We meet Dr. McKay, who has a ankle, what do you call it, like from the police on her. And so she has to respond anytime it starts to beep and let them know where she is because she's a flight risk or something. And then we meet all the young interns. And we meet the first. Sam jumps onto the tracks to save a woman, and that woman doesn't speak English. And they bring in the nurse who speaks 9 languages, but she's like, I don't know what she's speaking. And it turns out, through looking at a map on a phone, they figure out she's speaking Nepali. And so they use Google Translate, or no, they bring in like an auto translator or something. But anyway, that was sort of interesting. This part, this triathlete, Otis Williams, comes to see Dr. McKay after suffering shortness of breath while running and goes into cardiac arrest. This part freaked me out because my sons, run marathons and one of them's doing a triathlon, and I'm like all nervous. And this part kind of freaked me out because this guy's like, no, I'm in great shape and I run these all the time. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, but anyway, they figure that out. And then this part, finally, uncontrollably puking, Teresa is brought in by her 18-year-old son, David. And they kind of end up figuring out that, is it in this episode, that Teresa lied. She tells them that she drank Ipecac syrup to make herself puke, just so that she could bring her son David in and have him evaluated, because she found like a kill list of female classmates. But David is 18, so they can't force him to do anything. And this becomes a major storyline. Yeah, they talk about, I'm worried about Whitaker's patient, Mr. Milton, who seemingly has gallstones and should be fine, but it's almost too easy of a case for the med student. Any case on here that seems easy, is going to turn into bad. Mel and Langdon pair up to work on a case with a lethargic 4-year-old named Tyler, who they discover has accidentally eaten his dad's stash of weed gummies. The two doctors couldn't be more opposite, which means they make for a great team. Mel is one of my favorite characters. We know her sister is on the spectrum. And she talks about her sister, but she seems to have, I don't know, I'm not going to try to diagnose her, but something, and I totally get, like, she does this thing with her hands. She's so good, the actress. I kept wondering, like, this actress must have, because she just knows exactly the kinds of things. And then she puts her earbuds in and listens to white noise to kind of calm herself down, or goes in a room to be alone. Like, I know what you're doing. But I read about the actress after, and she's the daughter of Bryan Cranston, and she does have ADHD, it said somewhere. So I don't know if that's, I don't know if that, or if she's just acting. I don't know, but she's very, very, very good, and I loved her character. Okay, so anyway, that's episode 1. Let's look at episode 2. How do you just go to the next one? The Pitt recap. Physician, heal thyself. This is, oops. Oh no. Are they not going to let me? They're not going to let me read it. These sons of guns. I mean, I get it. They need to make money. Well, anyway, I was going to show you Mel. I'm not going to be able to do this unless somebody else says it. We'll just read episode list. Okay. That's better than nothing. We don't need to go over every single thing anyway. All right, season 2. Robbie helps siblings navigate their elderly father's end-of-life care. Oh, yeah. That was a rough one. Because Dr. Robbie's like, this man has a do not resuscitate order. And the kids, they're grown people kids. This is an old man. He's elderly, and they're also old. They don't want to allow that. So they kind of override it. They don't kind of, they do override it. And so they end up putting a breathing tube down. And Dr. Robbie's telling him, like, look, you're not going to save him. You'll just prolong it, and he'll be uncomfortable. And we can give him morphine and everything, but what's the point of doing that? And they insist on it. And he does it even though he doesn't want to. And after a while, they agree that, yeah, we'll take it out and, let him die naturally. And there's a whole storyline where he was one of the set designers, I think, on the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood TV show that was filmed in Pittsburgh. And it's very sweet. They don't talk in here about, let's see, later, Samira fends off cops targeting a woman with a misunderstood condition. Oh, yeah. There's a woman who comes in with sickle cell anemia, and the cops think she's being combative. And so they're like trying to pull her arms and handcuff her, but it's her anemia is making her muscles seize. That was an interesting story. But I also think in this episode is when this boy comes in who's overdosed. There were a group at Pitt College who took, they studied all night, and they bought some, I think it was Xanax, pills, but it turns out they were fentanyl. And so 2 of those people ended up in the hospital, and very, very sadly, and this is one of the times I cried, the one kid, they couldn't save him because nobody knew he had overdosed until it was too late. While the girl, they gave Narcan, I think, and saved her. That was so sad. That was the saddest. That was when I was like, oh boy, do I want to watch this, because this is really hard. But Samira does her best, this is episode 3, to keep Whitaker on the right track. A teen overdose sparks conflict in the ER. Okay, so Whitaker is this intern, I think this is him right here. And his patient who had gallstones, it turned out he had a heart attack. He just fell asleep, had a heart attack, well, I don't really know, but so he died in the hallway waiting for a room. And he felt like he didn't check on him enough, and he should have been able to save him. And so he had a lot of guilt because it's hour 1 of day 1. He lost a patient, which is sad. And they're kind of trying to tell him, look, it happens, and you couldn't have stood over him the entire time, and there is no way to know that. Everything you did was correct, but still sometimes bad things happen. So a teen overdose sparks conflict. Yeah, because the father of the boy who died went to the girl who overdosed and was like, you sold my son drugs. And she's like, he sold me drugs. And they're yelling at each other. And then she feels bad about it later. Okay. Season 1, episode 4. Bets are taken. Oh, yeah. Somebody came and stole the ambulance. And then they were all taking bets on what would happen with the ambulance. That whole storyline just seemed kind of goofy to me, but I think it's just showing that even during all this drama, you have to do normal, fun, silly things to keep sane, kind of. I mean, I've never understood the whole where you just bet and give money to people. How's that work? I've never totally understood. But anyway, if they said, how much do you want to put on it? I'd be like, well, I don't know. How does that work? Like, everybody's putting a different amount. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, that's a me problem. Bets are taken on the whereabouts of a stolen ambulance while Santos takes a hard lesson and Whitaker helps to tame the Kraken. Santos was one of the interns who kind of came off like a jerk a lot of the time. I don't know if she really is, but she was kind of mean to people. Residents. I don't know if they're a resident. I don't know my doctor terms. Apologies if I have it wrong. I can't think of what that hard lesson was. I don't know. And Whitaker helps tame the Kraken. Oh, Whitaker kept, it was sort of a silly thing. Like, he kept getting puked on and peed on. And so I think that's what that's talking about. All right, episode 5. Santos and Collins deal with their own moral and legal quandaries. And Collins. Samira earns praise from patients and reproach from Robbie. Who is this? How do you say that? Havadi? Oh, she's upends McKay's attempt to help an unhoused patient. Yeah, she was trying to talk to this unhoused patient to help her. And I don't know if you say Havadi. I guess that's how her name. I don't remember them saying her name. She came in and just said, like, social workers can be here, and kind of like made the woman uncomfortable. And so that was what that was. Santos and Collins deal with their own moral and legal quandaries. I don't know. Samira earns praise from patients and reproach from Robbie. Samira would spend a lot of time talking to patients and getting to know them, and Robbie is like, we have to hurry up. We have to run people in and out of here, because he's got the head of the hospital breathing down his back all the time. So, season 1, episode 6, which I'm sure is actually really true. They're worried about patient satisfaction, speed, like turnover of patients. They have all these like goals they have to hit. While Robbie handles an ultimatum from the hospital, Mel, Javadi, and Collins each handle unique mother-daughter dynamics. Mother-daughter dynamics. I'm trying to think. Mel, Collins each handle different. I don't know. I can't off the top of my head think of what that would be. All right, season 1, episode 7. After checking an influencer with odd symptoms, Samari challenges Robbie. Yeah, she meets this influencer and finds out she's testing all these makeups from different countries and stuff. And Robbie thinks she has, I forget what X thing, I don't know. But Samari, after talking to her for a while, thinks, I think the makeup might have mercury in it and it's poisoning her, or lead or something, I forget. And so they end up doing a heavy metal test on her, and sure enough, that's what it was. So she made that diagnosis because she spent the time talking to her. So Santos deals with a patient facing assault charges. A patient facing assault charges. I can't think of that. Season 1, episode 8. While Robbie attends to elderly patient with ties to Pittsburgh's history. Oh, yeah. Other members of the team attempt to resuscitate a young drowning... Ugh, that one made me cry. Attempt to resuscitate a young drowning victim. So Robbie attends to this man who lived in the Pittsburgh Hill District, and he was one of the founding members. I forget the name of it now, but basically the very first ambulance company. And they started basically running ambulance for the black community because I think the police or I guess the fire department wouldn't show up in their neighborhood all the time or as quickly. So they started their own like ambulance service for their neighborhoods in Pittsburgh. That was an interesting story. One I think I might look up and try to do a video on. Other members of the team attempt to resuscitate. Yeah, okay. That was so sad. And this story is sad because the little girl went to they jumped the fence to get their ball out of a pool. And the younger sister fell in, and the older sister jumped in to save the younger sister and ended up drowning. It was so sad. I cried. All right. Season 1, episode 9. Dana stops a fight between moms after Robbie's emotional case discussion. Yeah, I guess this is the one where in the waiting room, and I'm sure this happened at hospitals. There were 2 different moms there, and the one family was wearing masks, and the other family wasn't, and their daughter was coughing and snarfling, and so they asked if they would put a mask on her because everybody in the waiting rooms around there, and the mom said she has allergies, and they start fighting with each other in the waiting room, like screaming, yelling, and pushing people and whatever, and maybe hit each other, I don't remember. But so then Nurse Dana goes out there and she's like, stop it. So that's what that was about. And I bet. And we'll talk about the next one. Anyway, okay, Whitaker connects with the Kraken. Yeah, he has to take his medication or something. While McKay deals with a crash involving a pedestrian and an ex-patient. Pedestrian and an ex-patient. Oh, because she had given the patient... but then he passed out or something. I don't know. Okay. Season 1, episode 10. After being punched... Oh, this part's the worst. Okay, so it's at the end of episode 9. I was like, oh my God. Dana, who's my favorite nurse ever, she's the head of the emergency department. I don't know exactly what her job title would be, but she goes outside to have a cigarette, and she's looking in that direction. And this guy who's been mad at the ER all day, because what they do is they leave you in the sitting room, and then they bring you back, run a test, send you back out because they don't have room for you. While they're running the test, when they get that back, they'll call you back in. So he's kind of been in and out and in and out. And he has said really rude stuff, racist stuff to our favorite guy, Mateo. He's just a total tool jerk guy. I mean, he's mean. So they're like, well, he's like, I'm leaving and going to the other hospital. And they're like, that's fine, but you have to sign this form that if you drop dead on the way out, we're not responsible. So, and she had yelled at him at some point to like sit down and behave. So she's out there smoking a cigarette, and he just clocks her, like punches her in the face from the side so she doesn't see it coming or anything. It was shocking and terrible. And when she goes back in to talk to the rest of the staff, they're like they're upset and everything, but they're not as shocked as they should be because they've all been like punched or whatever. It's crazy. And then when the head of the hospital comes down, they basically talk to her about how there's not enough nurses and not enough security, and they've cheaped out on security because it's too expensive. It was like, oh my God. So that really changes her whole demeanor for the rest of the whole, series, which bummed me out. She arrives back in the ER with a bleeding nose, leaving everyone concerned. Additionally, the team has to deal with the case of a man who has a list of women he wants to eliminate. Okay, that's the kid from the start. So, episode 11. While Robbie tries to keep a developing staffing situation under wraps, Collins guides a surrogate through a difficult delivery. And Collins is, well, she was pregnant, and while on shift, she had a miscarriage. And she has to keep working because, she has people coming in. And so she guides this couple through this delivery, and it's kind of emotional for her. And then he talks to her at the end. And that was sad. Okay. And then I think it was at the end of this episode, they hear that there is a situation starting to brew. So, episode 12, when dozens of critical patients flood the ER, Robbie and his team struggle to keep up amid quickly diminished supplies. All right, this is a giant spoiler, so if you're thinking you might want to watch, back out of this video right now, because this is probably the biggest thing that happens. And to be honest, you can see it coming. You can see it coming. You know this is going to come up. So there is a music festival called Pitt Fest, and somebody shoots up Pitt Fest. So they have a mass casualty incident. And that was interesting to watch because they clear the waiting room. They send everybody in the waiting room to local minute clinics or the other hospitals. Actually, I don't know if they send them to the hospitals because they're going to need even the other. But anyway, they send them all out basically and say, you got to go somewhere else. And then they have a system where they have a triage out front, and they have wristbands that they snap on you for whether you're, gonna live and need looked at, you're gonna live, you need surgery, I forget but then if you get like a red wristband, that means you need immediate attention, and you don't want the black and white one. So that was kind of interesting to watch, and they just set it all up. They make a room that's all supplies and then set up the middle of the area so they can have lots of beds. And it feels like the one young first day doctor says, how do you all know what you're doing? And they were like, well, we have training for this and everything. But you kind of realize, because of flashbacks they have, that this kind of thing happened during COVID. And that's how they learned, how to handle a ton of patients all at once, I think. Because they show you some flashbacks of during COVID where they have all this plastic up between, and they have to wear the mask with the face shield and everything. Oh my God, it must have been so, wow. So then all these patients come in one after another, and now from here until the end, you thought it was like a lot before that. Now it's like, oh my gosh, it's like just constant, so much stuff going on. And during the show, I think we must have seen 30 airways be put in, like a lot. So this last part, 6, 7, 8, and 9, is kind of, it all gloms together in my head because it was so much so fast. But basically, they're just working on all these terrible gunshot wounds. They have to deal with the people who are family who are also at the concert, who they've put up in the cafeteria. And like his, I don't know, kind of stepson was at the Pitt Fest, and his girlfriend, unfortunately, he can't save. And the stepson blames him, which honestly, I thought that was the only thing where I was like, even if you were very, very upset, I can't see blaming him the way the stepson did. Like, that seemed to me like a not genuine reaction, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe you would. And there's a storyline about this one doctor who seems like a good doctor and seems nice, but he has been stealing, I think, Xanax. But when the call goes out for all doctors to come in for the night shift, he comes in and they need him, so they can't really send him home. And he hasn't reported it yet. The head hasn't reported Dr. Robbie. So it's not like been reported yet. So he does let him work. But that's sort of an interesting storyline too. Let's see. Yeah, Robbie refuses to give up on a mass casualty victim. That's because it's his like stepson's girlfriend. Samira and Santos each attempt risky moves. Yeah, there was a lot of that, kind of like doing things that maybe are very risky. I don't know how much really ERs do that, but whatever. It was dramatic. As the ER begins to quiet down, Robbie struggles to cope with a loss. Yeah, that was sad. With Abbott and Samira are challenged by patients' rapidly deteriorating conditions. Oh, you know what? They don't talk about Mel. I thought it was Mel. Maybe it was Samira. But there was a boy who ends up coming in like... Oh no, here's where that is. Hold on. Let me think about this. A guy gets crushed after all this on the hospital grounds. Like, that was crazy too. Rapidly deteriorating. I don't know. Okay. The last day, as the day shift prepares to finally head home. So now the night shift has come in. Robbie resorts to unorthodox methods, to convince the father of a critically ill teen to allow treatment. And that was interesting. They had a teenager who comes in and he has pneumonia and he's like deteriorating. And his younger sister called the 911 because her parents were at a movie. And so they come in and he has a rash on his legs. And I knew right away what it was because I'd looked stuff up. I was like, I know what that is. But anyway, and the young doctors didn't know what it was. And Dr. Robbie says, well, you're too young to know. It's measles rash. But I would think any young doctor would know. But okay. So then they're asking the parents. They said, we need to do a spinal tap so we know how to treat this. Because if you give him steroids, they explain it all. But basically, if you give him steroids he doesn't need it, that could make it worse. But if he does need it, it could save his life. So we need to do that. And the mom is on her phone Googling, and she goes, I read spinal taps can cause, paralysis, you to be paralyzed, whatever. And Dr. Robbie's like, no, that won't happen. That's not going to happen, And she's like, well, I read that you can do this without, you can just watch and wait. And he's like, I am a doctor, and I'm telling you, this is the best thing for your job. And he's like, had it because he's done so much that day. He's dealt with people who have gunshot wounds and stuff, who he's saving their life like by any means possible. And this woman thinks she knows more than him with her Google phone, and he's so frustrated. But he ends up taking the dad into the makeshift morgue, which you shouldn't do, but maybe they needed it. I don't know. Anyway, so then at the end it's a little cheesy because at the beginning of the first episode, Robbie comes in and the night shift doctor is like standing out on the roof. The roof has like, I don't know, a sort of fencing to keep you from walking out on this ledge here. And so the doctor has crawled beyond the fencing and is standing there like he might jump. And Dr. Robbie comes and is like, no, come on back. And so at the end of this episode, Dr. Robbie is now standing here and the night shift doctor comes and says, no, don't do it, which I thought was a little heavy-handed, but okay, whatever. But otherwise, I don't know enough about medical. I mean, I'm sure this is like, for most ER people, they'd be like, that's crazy. This stuff doesn't happen, and no young doctors are doing what they did. But I can't speak to that. All I can speak to is the writing. Everybody had a reason for doing what they were doing, and you kind of believed they'd go from A to B to C. And the character development was good, even though there's a lot going on. And you have a lot of characters, but you could keep track of them all. So I thought it was really well done and exciting, and I couldn't wait to watch it. I think I watched all of these episodes in 4 days, maybe 5 days. I was up to like 2 a.m. watching. So, yeah, I recommend it. I don't think in that write-up they talked enough about Mel because I really liked her character a lot. I think she was like my favorite. So,